I never expected my mom's best friend to call me that night, let alone for something so simple. But as I stood at her doorstep, fixing her computer turned into a moment that would change everything. Her lingering gaze, a touch that stayed just a second too long, it all felt wrong. Or was it? What happened next left me questioning everything I thought I knew about trust, relationships, and boundaries. I'm Ethan, a 28-year-old IT consultant, and to most people, I'm the go-to guy for fixing anything tech-related. Whether it's family, friends, or coworkers, I've spent years solving problems others can't figure out. It's a routine I know too well, one that usually ends with a polite thank you and little else, until that night. The call came from someone unexpected. Lisa, my mom's best friend. Lisa has been in my life as long as I can remember. At 42, she's the picture of grace and elegance. Always impeccably dressed, carrying herself with a quiet confidence. Growing up, she was practically family, but after her husband passed away a few years ago, she retreated into herself. Mom told me she was struggling with the loneliness, though I never thought much of it until that evening. "Hey, Ethan, I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, her voice light but tinged with uncertainty. "Not at all. What's up?" "I'm having trouble with my computer. Something about an update. I know it's late, but I could really use your help." It wasn't unusual for me to get calls like this, but hearing the faint vulnerability in her tone made me pause. "Sure, Lisa. I'll swing by after work." When I arrived at her house, it felt oddly nostalgic. The cozy decor, the framed family photos, it all brought back memories of childhood gatherings where Lisa was always the life of the room. She greeted me at the door, looking effortlessly put together in a casual dress that somehow felt intentional. "You've really grown up, Ethan," she remarked, her eyes scanning me in a way that made my chest tighten. "You look different. Professional." I shrugged off the comment, focusing instead on her computer. While I worked, we talked, her cheerful demeanor gradually giving way to a quieter vulnerability. She opened up about her struggles with the emptiness of the house, the silence that followed her husband's death, and how difficult it had been to move forward. "Some days it feels like I'm invisible," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But it's nice having someone here for a change." Her words lingered, leaving me unsure of how to respond. This wasn't just a routine call for help. It felt like something more. After that evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between Lisa and me. At first, I tried to dismiss it, convincing myself I was overthinking the way she smiled or the subtle touches she placed on my arm. But the memories kept replaying in my mind, each interaction feeling heavier than the last. The next day, Lisa texted me, "Thanks again for helping with the computer. Everything's working perfectly now. If it's not too much trouble, could you stop by again this evening? I have a few more questions about setting up my email." It felt harmless enough. After all, I'd spent my life helping people with tech issues, so I didn't think twice about agreeing. But when I arrived, the atmosphere felt different. Lisa greeted me with a warm smile, wearing jeans and a sweater that somehow made her look even more radiant than before. The casual outfit didn't hide her usual elegance, and I found myself momentarily speechless as she welcomed me in. "Thanks for coming back," she said, motioning me toward the desk. "I promise I won't take too much of your time." "No worries," I replied, unpacking my tools. "Happy to help." As I worked on her email settings, I noticed her staying close, pulling up a chair to sit beside me instead of leaving the room like most people did. I felt her eyes on me, and the air seemed thicker than usual. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it wasn't normal either. "You've really grown into such a capable man," she said softly, breaking the silence. Her words hung in the air, her gaze lingering on me just a second too long. I cleared my throat, unsure of how to respond. This wasn't the casual banter I was used to. It felt loaded, as though she was trying to say more than her words revealed. "I guess I've had a lot of practice," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. Lisa smiled faintly, but her expression grew thoughtful. "It's not just that. There's a maturity about you now, something I didn't see before." I shifted uncomfortably, focusing on the screen. "How have you been holding up?" I asked, trying to redirect the conversation. She sighed, her vulnerability returning. "Some days are better than others. Nights are the hardest. The house gets so quiet, too quiet." Her words struck a chord. The loneliness in her voice was palpable, and for the first time, I began to see her as more than just my mom's best friend. She wasn't just a figure from my childhood. She was a person struggling, reaching out. But even as I tried to keep my thoughts grounded, I couldn't ignore the electricity that seemed to hum between us. When I finished setting up her email, Lisa touched my arm lightly, her fingers lingering. "Thank you, Ethan. I don't know what I'd do without you." I laughed nervously, brushing off her gratitude. "You'd manage. You're stronger than you think." Her smile softened, and for a moment we just stood there, the silence stretching into something almost tangible. Her eyes met mine, and I felt my pulse quicken. Was I imagining things, or was there something unspoken in her gaze? "I should probably get going," I said quickly, stepping back. Her expression faltered briefly, but she recovered, nodding. "Of course. Thanks again for everything. And don't be a stranger, okay?" As I drove home, my thoughts were a chaotic swirl. The way she looked at me, the way her voice softened when she spoke, it felt like more than gratitude. Was I reading too much into it, or was there something deeper brewing beneath the surface? Over the next few days, our conversations continued through text. Light at first, but growing more frequent and personal. Each message felt like a thread pulling us closer, and I couldn't help but wonder where it would all lead. The line between us was blurring, and I wasn't sure how to stop it, or if I even wanted to. By the time Saturday evening arrived, I had already spent far too much time debating whether I should accept Lisa's dinner invitation. Her casual text, "How about dinner this weekend?" Nothing fancy, just a thank you for all your help. Felt innocent enough, but deep down I knew this wasn't just about gratitude anymore. When I arrived at her house, holding a bottle of wine I'd picked up on the way, the sight of Lisa took my breath away. She opened the door wearing a soft navy blue dress that hugged her figure in a way that felt both elegant and deliberate. Her hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders, and the faint scent of vanilla wafted toward me as she greeted me with a warm smile. "You didn't have to bring anything," she said, eyeing the wine. "I wanted to," I replied. It felt weird showing up empty-handed. Her laugh was soft, almost shy, and for a moment I caught a glimpse of vulnerability in her eyes. "Well, thank you. Come on in." The house smelled incredible, garlic, butter, and something rich and savory. The dining table was set with candles and matching plates, the effort she'd put into the evening unmistakable. "Wow," I said, taking it all in. "This is really nice." "I thought it'd be fun to make it a little special," she replied, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. There was a subtle hesitance in her tone, as though she was unsure how I'd react. As we ate, the conversation flowed effortlessly, filled with laughter and stories of old memories. Lisa teased me about the time I broke her TV remote as a teenager, and I retaliated with a story about her scolding me for sneaking cookies during dinner parties. It was easy, comfortable. But beneath the light-hearted banter, there was an unspoken tension. Every glance felt charged, every laugh lingered a moment too long. "You know," Lisa said after a sip of wine, her voice softening, "it's been a long time since I've done this. Sitting down for dinner with someone who actually listens." Her words struck a chord, and I found myself leaning forward. "I can't imagine how tough it's been for you, Lisa." She smiled faintly, but her eyes carried a weight that her voice didn't. Losing Michael left a hole that I didn't know how to fill. For a while I stopped trying. It just felt easier to be alone. I didn't know what to say. The raw honesty in her words caught me off guard, and all I could do was nod. "You're not alone tonight," I said finally. Her gaze lingered on mine, and I felt the air between us shift. The candlelight flickered, casting soft shadows across her face, and for a brief moment, the years between us seemed to disappear. She wasn't just Lisa, my mom's best friend anymore. She was someone who had been through pain and loss, someone who looked at me in a way no one else ever had. After dinner, we moved to the living room with our glasses of wine. The space between us on the couch felt smaller than it had at the table, and I became acutely aware of every movement she made. The way she tucked her legs beneath her, the way her fingers played with the stem of her glass. "Can I be honest with you about something?" she asked, breaking the silence. "Of course," I replied, my chest tightening. She hesitated, then took a deep breath. "It's been a long time since I felt this comfortable around someone. And I don't just mean as friends. There's something about you, Ethan. Being with you tonight. It reminds me of how it feels to really connect with someone." Her words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. I stared at her, unsure if I'd heard her correctly. "Lisa, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," she said quickly, her cheeks flushing. "I know this probably sounds crazy. You're younger, and we've known each other forever, but I just needed to tell you how I feel." The vulnerability in her voice made my chest ache. She wasn't trying to pressure me or make me uncomfortable. She was simply being honest. And as I looked at her, really looked at her, I couldn't deny the feelings I'd been trying to suppress. "Lisa," I began, pausing to gather my thoughts. You're one of the most incredible people I've ever known. Tonight has been amazing, and I'd be lying if I said I hadn't thought about what it might mean if there was something more between us. Her eyes widened slightly. You have? I nodded. Yeah, I have. We sat in silence, the weight of our words settling around us. Finally, I reached out and took her hand, surprising even myself. Maybe we don't have to figure everything out right now. Maybe we just see where this goes. Her face lit up, and she squeezed my hand gently. I'd like that. In that moment, the line we'd been dancing around for weeks dissolved completely. Whatever came next, we'd crossed into new territory, uncharted, complicated, and undeniably real. The days after that night at Lisa's house were a blur of emotions, confusion, excitement, and guilt swirling together in a way I couldn't untangle. Our interactions became more frequent and more intimate, yet we never explicitly acknowledged what was happening. It felt like we were living in a fragile bubble, one that could burst at any moment. One afternoon, my mom asked me to stop by Lisa's house to pick up an old box of photos she'd left there. I hesitated, my stomach tightening at the thought of seeing Lisa again. But there was no way to avoid it. When I arrived, Lisa greeted me at the door with a smile that seemed a little forced. Hey, Ethan. Come on in. The house felt different, quieter than usual, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Lisa led me into the living room, where the box of photos was waiting on the coffee table. I reached for it, but her voice stopped me. Ethan, she said softly, her tone unusually serious. We need to talk. I straightened up, my heart pounding. About what? She gestured to the couch, and I reluctantly sat down beside her. Lisa clasped her hands together, her fingers twisting nervously. About us. About what's been happening. The air in the room felt heavy, and I struggled to find the right words. Lisa, I don't even know where to start. Neither do I, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But we can't keep pretending this isn't real. Something's changed between us, and we need to figure out what that means. I nodded, my chest tightening. I know. I've been thinking about it constantly, but it's complicated. You're my mom's best friend. If she found out. Lisa winced, her expression filled with pain. I know. That's what makes this so hard. The last thing I want is to hurt your mom. She's like a sister to me. But, Ethan, I can't ignore how I feel about you. Her words hung in the air, and I felt like the ground was shifting beneath me. I cared about Lisa deeply, but the consequences of acting on those feelings were terrifying. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my thoughts. Lisa, I care about you too. A lot. But we have to be careful. If this gets out, it could destroy everything. Lisa nodded slowly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I know. And I don't want to rush into anything that could hurt either of us, or your mom. But I also don't want to pretend like this isn't happening. We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of our emotions pressing down on us. Finally, Lisa reached out and took my hand. Maybe we need to take a step back. Set some boundaries. Figure out what we both want. I swallowed hard, my chest aching at the thought of creating distance between us. Maybe you're right. Before either of us could say anything more, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway broke the tension. I glanced toward the window, and my stomach dropped. It was my mom. Panic surged through me as Lisa quickly pulled her hand away. She can't find out, I whispered, my voice tight with fear. Lisa nodded, her face pale. I'll handle it. Just stay calm. The front door opened, and my mom's voice rang out cheerfully. Lisa? Are you home? In here. Lisa called, her tone surprisingly steady. She stood up and smoothed her dress, her expression neutral by the time my mom walked into the room. There you are, my mom said, smiling warmly. Oh, Ethan. I didn't know you'd be here. Just picking up the photos, I replied, forcing a casual tone. My mom glanced between us, her brow furrowing slightly. Everything okay? Of course, Lisa said quickly, her smile unwavering. We were just catching up. The tension in the room was unbearable, and I couldn't tell if my mom noticed it or not. She chatted with Lisa for a few minutes before turning to me. Ready to head out? Yeah, I said, grabbing the box of photos. I glanced at Lisa one last time, and our eyes met briefly, an unspoken understanding passing between us. As my mom and I left, I couldn't help but feel like something had irrevocably shifted. Later that evening, I received a text from Lisa. We need to talk. I stared at the screen for a long moment before typing back. I'll come by tomorrow. The next day, I returned to Lisa's house, my heart heavy with anticipation. She greeted me at the door, her expression somber. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. We sat down in the living room, and Lisa took a deep breath. "Ethan, I've been thinking a lot about what happened yesterday. About everything." "Me too," I said quietly. She looked at me, her eyes filled with sadness. "I care about you more than I can put into words, but we can't keep going like this. It's not fair, to you, to your mom, or to me." I nodded, my throat tight. "I know, but it's not easy to just stop feeling this way." "I don't want to stop," Lisa admitted, her voice trembling. "But I also don't want to ruin what we have, or the relationships that matter to us." We sat in silence, the weight of her words sinking in. Finally, I spoke. "So what do we do?" Lisa met my gaze, her expression resolute. "We take a step back. We give ourselves space to think, to figure out what's right, for both of us." The thought of creating distance between us was agonizing, but I knew she was right. "Okay," I said finally. "If that's what you think is best." "It's not what I want," Lisa said, her voice breaking. "But it's what we need." As I left her house that day, my heart felt heavy with loss. Whatever was happening between us had reached its breaking point, and there was no going back. The line we'd crossed had left a mark, one that wouldn't easily fade. For the first time, I felt the weight of what was truly at stake, and I wasn't sure if either of us could handle what came next. The days following my conversation with Lisa felt like a void, a strange limbo where everything seemed muted and lifeless. I went through the motions of work and life, but my thoughts kept circling back to her. The memory of her voice, her touch, and the pain in her eyes haunted me. For the first time, I felt the full weight of what we'd been risking. Not just my relationship with Lisa, but the bond one shared with my mom. The guilt was unbearable. Every time my mom casually mentioned Lisa, or asked how she was doing, I felt like I was betraying her trust all over again. I couldn't meet her eyes, afraid she'd see the truth hidden beneath my carefully neutral expressions. Lisa and I kept our distance, just as we'd agreed. There were no texts, no calls, no excuses to see each other. It was like she had vanished from my life, leaving a gaping hole I couldn't ignore. The absence was suffocating, but I knew it was for the best, or at least I told myself that. One evening, as I sat alone in my apartment, my phone buzzed. My heart raced when I saw Lisa's name on the screen. The message was simple. "How are you holding up?" I stared at the words for what felt like an eternity, torn between the urge to reply and the need to respect the boundaries we'd set. Finally, I typed back, "It's been hard." "You?" Her reply came quickly. "The same. I miss talking to you." Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to tell her how much I missed her too, how every day felt emptier without her. But I knew that giving in to those feelings would only make things worse. Instead, I replied, "I miss it too, but we agreed this was the right thing to do." There was a long pause before her next message came through. "I know. It just doesn't make it any easier." Weeks turned into months, and though the pain of separation dulled, it never truly went away. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the ache in my chest. But every now and then, something would remind me of Lisa. A song on the radio, a scent, or even the way the sunlight filtered through my window, and the memories would come flooding back. One afternoon, my mom asked me to help her sort through some old photo albums. As we flipped through the pages, laughing at the awkward hairstyles and outdated clothes, a photo of Lisa and me caught my eye. It was from a summer barbecue years ago. I was just a teenager then, grinning awkwardly at the camera while Lisa stood beside me, her arm draped casually over my shoulder. "You two were always so close," my mom said, her voice filled with warmth. "Lisa's always thought of you as family." Her words twisted something inside me, and I forced a smile, nodding in agreement. But inside, the guilt was unbearable. Lisa wasn't just family anymore, not in the way my mom believed. The weight of what we'd almost become hung heavy over me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was keeping a terrible secret. One day, out of the blue, Lisa called me. Hearing her voice again was like a balm to my soul, but it also reopened old wounds. "I know we said we needed space," she began, her voice shaky. "But I can't keep pretending like this doesn't hurt. Ethan, I miss you." Her words broke something inside me. "I miss you too," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "Every day." "But what do we do?" she asked, her vulnerability raw. "I don't want to keep hurting like this, but I don't want to ruin your relationship with your mom either." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "I don't know, Lisa. I've been asking myself the same thing every day. I care about you so much, but it feels like there's no way for this to work without destroying everything else." Her silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Finally, she said, Maybe we need to stop trying to fix this and just accept that some things aren't meant to be. Her words hit me like a physical blow, and I felt my chest tighten. Is that what you really want? No, she said softly. But maybe it's what we need. Tears blurred my vision as I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Maybe you're right. Letting go of Lisa felt like losing a part of myself. The connection we'd shared, the laughter, the vulnerability, the unspoken understanding, was something I'd never experienced before, and I wasn't sure I ever would again. But as much as it hurt, I knew she was right. The price of holding on was too high. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself even harder into work, trying to rebuild the walls I'd let down. Lisa and I stopped communicating entirely, and though it felt like a piece of my heart had been ripped away, I knew it was for the best. The fallout of our almost relationship left scars that would take time to heal, but it also taught me something valuable. Some connections, no matter how deep or meaningful, aren't meant to last. And sometimes letting go is the hardest yet most necessary thing to do. Months passed, and life began to settle into a new rhythm. The raw ache that had followed my decision to step away from Lisa softened into something quieter, a bittersweet memory that I carried with me. There were moments when I'd catch myself thinking about her, a song that reminded me of the night we shared dinner, or the way she smiled when I fixed her computer. But instead of pain, those memories brought a sense of gratitude. Lisa had been a part of my life for so long, and though things didn't work out the way I once hoped, I realized she had given me something I hadn't known I needed: clarity about myself. She'd helped me see the value of connection, of vulnerability, and of setting boundaries when emotions threatened to spiral out of control. One evening, as I sat with my mom over coffee, she casually mentioned Lisa. She's been doing better lately, my mom said with a smile. She's even started going to a book club and meeting new people. I'm glad. She deserves some happiness after everything she's been through. Hearing that filled me with a quiet sense of relief. Lisa had always been resilient, and knowing she was finding her way forward made the heaviness in my chest ease a little more. I wanted the best for her, even if I couldn't be part of that journey. Over time, I began to reflect on what had happened between us with a clearer mind. The feelings we shared were real, but they had been born out of loneliness and vulnerability, two forces that can blur the lines of judgment. What we had wasn't wrong in its essence, but the context, the tangled web of relationships surrounding us, made it impossible to pursue without collateral damage. The moral of our story became clear. Sometimes, the right choice isn't the easiest or the most satisfying, but it's the one that allows everyone involved to move forward without regret. Lisa and I had chosen to prioritize the people we cared about, my mom, our shared history, over the fleeting intensity of a forbidden connection. For me, that meant rebuilding trust with myself, acknowledging my feelings, and learning to let them go. For Lisa, it meant reclaiming her independence and finding joy in her own life. And for both of us, it meant carrying the lessons of our time together into the future. One day, I received a text from Lisa. It was brief but warm. I just wanted to thank you, Ethan, for everything. I hope you're doing well. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Thank you too, Lisa. I'll always wish the best for you. That was the last time we spoke, but it was enough. It wasn't a grand goodbye or a dramatic finale, but a quiet acknowledgement of the chapter we'd shared and the lessons we'd learned. Looking back, I realized that love, in all its forms, isn't always about holding on. Sometimes it's about knowing when to let go, when to protect the people you care about, even if it means walking away. Lisa will always hold a special place in my heart, not as a mistake or a regret, but as a poignant reminder of the complexities of relationships and the strength it takes to do what's right. And while the experience left its mark, it also gave me a new perspective on love and connection. One I'll carry with me as I continue to navigate the unpredictable twists and turns of life. What would you have done in Ethan's shoes? Would you have followed your heart or made the same choice he did? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that explore the unexpected twists of love, loyalty, and betrayal. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Stay tuned for another shocking tale that will leave you speechless.